Good morning and welcome to the Richie Allen television show in association with BVtv and BVtv. How are you? I hope you're well. I hope you've had a good week. It is Friday, January the 29th, 2016, and we're recording this in the early AM in the great city of Manchester. Well, there's lots to get into in this particular show, but before I get into it, I'm going to call in Hayden Hewitt really early. Hayden presents on liveleak.com every Thursday, the Live Leak show, which now goes out at 10 p.m. GMT. And it's not often that I get a complaint about something that he says in the Live Leak show, but I got a complaint yesterday. And it's about a television show which goes out on Channel 4 called The Undatables, which is a charming programme about people with different disabilities. Sometimes people who don't, maybe people who are, maybe somebody who uses a wheelchair, maybe somebody who's got a learning disability, maybe somebody who is vertically challenged. I don't know whether we should say midget or dwarf. Is it dwarf? Dwarf's the accepted term, and stuff like that. Now, you had a bit to say about that programme on the Live Leak show last night. I found it amusing. I didn't think there was anything untoward about it. But one or two people said he's laughing at people with disabilities who want to go on a date. I don't think you were, really.
No.
I didn't get it like that.
But I think it's only fair, because usually on your show I try and present myself a little different. I think it's only fair that I say that to other people that if you were offended by anything you saw on the Live Leak show, walk it off.
Walk it off.
I don't care. There you go. No, of course I wasn't laughing. He's just... Yeah.
I don't want people to think you were. He wasn't laughing, and people can watch it back. He wasn't. The Undatables was a wonderful show, by the way. It's a very unusual show. Recent episodes had young children. Well, I say young, they're not young children. They're young men and women. Some with Down syndrome, some with intellectual learning disabilities, who want to meet somebody to have a date with and to find love. And I think Channel 4 do a really good job of it. It's not at all patronising or condescending. I think it's bloody good. And I know you like it because you watch it.
And I'm sorry, some of it is funny.
It is funny.
It's
meant to make you laugh.
Yes. They say funny things.
Absolutely, they say funny things.
You've got to sit there like a po-faced miserable.
Yes. I remember about a year ago or 2 years ago, there was an episode where there was a young lad, very good-looking young lad, in his early 20s. I think he'd done some modelling work, but he had severe blurt-out Tourette's. And it was hilarious. They followed him around the supermarket, doing his daily business, and some of the stuff he was saying was how are you not supposed to laugh at that?
If you can't,
people are funny, aren't they?
I'm struggling to try and be reasonable about people that are offended, because most of the time, if people are offended, I don't care.
You and David Icke are on the same page here. This PC stuff is not just something that's causing an annoyance. It's something very serious that's deliberately being brought about to prevent expressing your feelings about anything which might in any way challenge somebody else's perception or their view of things. And in the case of The Undatables, it is funny. Some of the things that some of these young men and women say are funny, and whether people like it or not, that's what it is.
Well, it's
anyway,
the same
watch
I know life for it. Come on.
Yeah.
If you see someone fall over in the street, all right, if it's an old deer and her legs go up in the air, she's shouting "ooh," as long as you know she's not broke her hip, it's funny.
Absolutely.
And if people don't find it funny, that's fine.
And when there's somebody on a date and they've got an intellectual disability and they keep saying the same thing to their date over and over again, they forget that they've said it. They might repeat the same fact about themselves. That's amusing. It's not laughing at the disability. It's amusing.
The guys with autism, what they are is just remarkably blunt.
Absolutely.
And to me, there's something wonderful about it. The world would be a better place if everyone just said, "How are you feeling?"
Brilliant.
This is shit.
Yeah.
If they just answered, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
So I enjoy it. And I make no apologies. And if you want to think I was laughing at it, I don't mind.
No. Knowing that I was coming to do the show today, one or two of our listeners went, ask him about some of that stuff he was saying about The Undatables.
I just next week I'll say something to him.
Yeah. If I had a problem with it, I would have said it. By the way, in the absence of good dramatic programming on television today, there isn't much of it going on. I mean, some of the American shows are brilliant. Do watch The Undatables on Channel 4. It is fantastic. I endorse it. Anyway, didn't come here to talk about that. The Undatables particularly. Came here today to have a look at what's gone on this week in the news, but to prove that we're here live on Friday the 29th of January 2016, we're going to take a wee look, if the battery in this blooming thing holds up, a wee look at what's going on in the news today. Aidan, I think we'll start with the BBC. BBC, EU referendum. Cameron discusses emergency brake on benefits. David Cameron is in Brussels talking with Jean-Claude Juncker to curb in-work benefits for migrants. So when migrants arrive here, those migrants who come here because they want their benefit system and all of that sort of UKIP stuff, that basically for the first 4 years they will be here, they won't be able to claim in-work benefits. This is a charade. It's a ruse. You are supposed to believe, you, the British man or woman watching this programme, that there is genuine debate and that there is a genuine discourse, can I say discourse? Yeah. Between the Eurosceptics in politics and those who want to support Britain's membership of the European Union. There isn't. It's always been the plan for the centralisation of power and for a political union amongst the member states. Don't believe this bullshit. This is smoke and mirrors. Yeah, okay, it's serious. It's serious if you can't get a job in the town you come from or in the city you live in, and you go to a job centre and you look around it and there are men and women from all manner of countries. Yes, I'm not denying all of that, but it's a bigger issue than that. I'm not buying into it. In fact, knowing I was going to just briefly talk about this EU nonsense, I did, on my little device here, I did make a note of a couple of facts that are really important. Hayden will come in on this in a minute if he wants. Like me, he doesn't believe in the European Union. It was announced this week by a number of economists that Britain gains nothing in terms of trade success from being in the EU. This is a fact, by the way. One of the things you hear from Cameron is we want to move away from the political union. We want to have our sovereignty, but we want to stay within the trading bloc. I made a few notes. These are facts, not conjecture. Jump in anytime you want, my friend. As a member of the European Union, Britain can only negotiate trade deals as one voice among 28. Right? All of which, and I've taken this from economists, men and women, all of which have differing needs, all of these 28 member states, of course, a process which often takes forever and a day and negates any advantage that Britain might have. And to give an example of this, and this is from an economist writing in the Guardian, funnily enough, who is a pro-European Union newspaper. The steel industry in this country, one of the reasons why it's in absolute disarray, while steel mills are being closed down, Redcar and all the rest of them, people are out of work, is because of the European Union's failure to agree tariffs on the cheap importation of Chinese steel, which basically fucks British steel producers. Now in the States, takes about 3 to 4 weeks to sort this out. In the European Union, Hayden, takes years. Years.
All they want from us is the how many millions is it per day?
That's right.
And our banking sector. That's what they want.
Our economists, fair play to some of the economists who've come out and spoke against this whole trade nonsense. Now, most of these economists want to stay in the European Union, but to their credit, they've come out and said the trade and stuff is bollocks. And they've given so many examples of it, including an example this week, which even the BBC had the courage to broadcast, which was that there are 16 countries not in the European Union who do better in terms of trading with bloc countries within the EU by not being in there.
Why would what people in Europe want from us change? Yeah. Just because we weren't a part of the European Union?
That's it, mate.
It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. And even the Mark Carney, Director, Bank of England, Governor of the Bank of England, I am sorry, has said the longer you let this rumble on, the more instability we're going to get in the markets. In other words, just go one way or the other, just go.
Absolutely.
Do something.
Absolutely.
This is worse.
It's a sinister...
And then we've got the SNP, haven't we?
That's right.
Oh, you can't have the vote then. What about our vote? Well, do you know what, fellas?
That's right.
Don't care.
Well, funny you mentioned them. Question Time, which is the BBC's charade every Thursday night that captains of industry alongside politicians and celebrities debate the issues of the day. One of the questions was an EU question last night. The BBC must have anticipated that. Not a single member of their panel, not a single one, was in favour of Britain leaving the European Union. There's democracy for you right there. But I'm going to leave the European Union for now. It's one of the most sinister developments in our lives, in our lifetime. It's about the centralisation of power, and it's a great stepping stone to a one world government. That's what it is. What the European Union has been used for in recent years has been to loan massive amounts of money to countries like Ireland, Greece, Spain, Italy, Portugal and others, money they couldn't afford to pay back, which they never could afford to pay back, so that their real wealth would be taken from them. I'm talking about state assets, gas, oil contracts, energy contracts, transport contracts, all of that. That's what's happened in my country. It's what's happening in Greece, in Spain, in Italy. And by the way, I'm sick to death of listeners to this listeners to my radio show and viewers of this telling me to stop bitching about Podemos in Spain. Podemos in Spain are Syriza under a different banner. Controlled opposition. They are not in favour of leaving the European Union and writing down Spain's debt and telling the IMF to go and fuck off. They're not in favour of doing that. Controlled opposition, as I predicted Syriza was back in January of last year. Don't get me started on that nonsense anyway. I'm in some form today. Where are we going next, Aidan? We're going to Trump, aren't we? Yeah. The BBC are talking about Trump today. Fox News hosted a debate last night. There's about 15 of these debates for the would-be Republican candidates. These are the primaries, the primary debates. So the Republican Party are in the process of selecting a man or a woman to contest the next election, which will be in November, of course, of this year, 2016. The news is full of stories. All the papers are gone with it. The Trump didn't turn up because he didn't like Megyn Kelly. In one of the previous debates chaired by Megyn Kelly, she asked Trump, listen, I have no time for Fox News, but I think it was a fair question. She asked Trump some questions about some of the comments he made about women, particularly Rosie O'Donnell and other women and stuff like that. Now, I have no time for Trump. I have no time for the whole process or any of these candidates, but I'm just saying she was asking some fair questions about his comments about women. You wouldn't imagine it's a good thing to have somebody leading a country, whether it's America, whether it's Britain, whether it's Ireland, who's made some of the comments about women. Anyway, he didn't want to debate. He went to a veterans event instead, a charity event, and the media is full of it. What the media are not asking, Hayden Hewitt, is the question that most of the people in America are not asking. Why do we have to choose between a bunch of multimillionaires and billionaires to lead us into the next 4 years or 8 years? How is this the paradigm? Why is it these people put in front of us? That's the question, isn't it?
Because it's been turned into the X Factor. It costs a lot of money to run.
And it's a soap opera.
I would be more concerned about why would you possibly elect someone who refuses to talk to a Fox journalist and then expect them to go on and be the strong man against people like Putin.
Yeah.
Cameron.
Yeah.
Cameron would talk rings around the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is he going to do that if he's like, I don't like her, she's not professional. No offence, Donald.
You know. It's a very valid point, that. Absolutely right. Tragic that much of yesterday afternoon's, much of the news programmes on cable news yesterday, even in Britain, were consumed by this ludicrous story about Donald Trump. We're off to Disneyland now. Had a good rant about this on the radio show last night. Apparently, a man was trying to enter the New York hotel not far from Disneyland Paris yesterday afternoon. In his possession was a bag, and in the bag was a couple of guns, copious amounts of bullets, and a Quran. That's the story. This has been accepted widely as a terrifying incident. It's being reported widely that a massive, narrow escape was had by Parisians and also by the visiting tourists to the Disneyland attraction in Paris. Massive escape. We had an easy escape there. In the absence of any real journalism in the mainstream media, I'll just ask a couple of questions that I'm honest enough to say now I don't have the answers to. But I'll ask them anyway. Why was he stopped going into the hotel with the bag? I would guess 500 people a day walk into a hotel with a bag. Why was he stopped? Did the police have intelligence about him? They said they didn't. They said they didn't know anything about him. There was some prior arrest that had nothing to do with terrorism. But he was stopped going into a hotel. Why was he walking into a hotel with a hold-all bag with nothing else in it, only guns, bullets and a Quran? Why was that? Why would he do that? Was it to identify him Was it to later identify him as a Muslim, or as a Muslim terrorist, or as a member of ISIS? Do you want to jump in?
Perhaps it was the I Heart ISIS badge he must have been wearing at the time, yeah?
Yeah. Now, I know you play the devil's advocate quite rightly, and you say, Richie, you know it's possible. And you're right to say that. Of course it is. Nothing I've said would lead anybody to think that I'm saying it's impossible. But as I said to you prior to coming on air, I'm just sick to death of this nonsense. I'm sick to death. I'm sick to death of passports turning up and all of this.
Well, you see, there's the problem.
Yeah.
Where was his passport?
Where was the passport?
I expect more of my
They
terrorists.
haven't mentioned it.
I expect more of my terrorists. I expect them to be carrying full identification at all times.
And I said on the show last night, the radio show, I said, look, I was joking. I said, I give up. Hands up, I give up. I'm sick of it now, You can have all the controls you want. You can ban us from doing this programme. You can ban David Icke's books. You can shut down Michael Rivero. LiveLeak.com can go off the air because we're just sick of it. If it means that you stop with these bullshit stories about would-be terrorists, you can have all the control you want. It's absolutely insane. We'll come back to controlling our fears shortly, by the way, on this television show. By the way, check out beyondvision.tv. Check it out now, as well as davidicke.com/headlines. And speaking of absolutely bizarre stories, here we go. Nobody disputes that a bunch of lunatic jihadists are causing chaos in Syria and in Iraq. Nobody. I accept it's happening. However, ISIS wants its own navy for attacks on cruise ships in the Mediterranean. I hope they do, because cruise ships fuck you in the arse. They sell you an all-inclusive deal, they sell you a lovely cabin, then you get in there and you have to buy the drinks. Fuck them. ISIS, do your worst. Let me read the story. A senior NATO naval officer, Jesus Christ, says the rise of the militant group in Libya is casting a shadow over shipping in the Med. By the way, I was told last week by one viewer, when I get excited, I revert to Waterford Richie from teenage years, late 1980s, begin to talk very quickly. I did notice that. Sometimes comment. Hard to understand. It was only one person, by the way. It was. And they got a rude response. Fuck off, basically. If you can't get excited about this, I do try to temper my enthusiasm. I do try to speak clearly and concisely. A senior NATO naval officer says the rise of ISIS in Libya is casting a shadow over shipping in the Med. Islamic State militants hope to build a maritime arm that could carry out attacks in the Med. The march of Islamic State in Iraq and Levant along the Libyan coast has cast an uncomfortable shadow across shipping, said Vice Admiral Clive Johnson. Look. Since I was invited by BVT to make this television show, we've learned that they're building schools to suit the British jihadists that are moving over there. That they have a publishing arm that are writing books about the ISIS philosophy. They also have books coming out telling their converts how to properly rape a woman. How to do it properly now.
You wouldn't want to do it improperly.
I can't imagine what they mean by properly. And this is true, they've said properly without explaining it. Does properly mean that at the end of it, you part on good terms?
That'd be tricky.
This is skating on thin ice here, right?
To certain cultural traditions with non-Islamic women.
Yeah.
But I've got to jump.
How many other things have we been told now?
But I want to be so inappropriate about this, and I can't, because in Star Wars you had Admiral Akbar, didn't you? So,
that's right.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, but it's just Avast ye salty sea dogs.
Yeah.
Peace be upon them.
Yeah.
We'll sail the seven seas and kill those buffet-eating bastards. Come on. The ISIS Navy.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of lunatics.
So what's happening here then?
Toyota Land Cruisers.
So we must conclude, even though you and I have, thankfully, it's great to have different opinions. It's great to have people around you who think differently than you do. But we are in agreement here that massive amount of lies are being told.
The fear-mongering is exceptional.
Unbelievable.
And the worst part is,
it's being believed.
It's being believed, and it masks the genuine wrongdoing to a large degree.
Yeah.
It puts the public under a totally undue level of tension.
Yeah, because they should be looking over that way, and in that direction we see MI5, MI6, CIA, possibly the Mossad, even though they get blamed for everything, maybe not the Mossad, but other intelligence agencies making sure that the ISIS guys have what they need.
Everything.
Let's not look at that, let's look over there.
but everything is Mossad. Don't back away from it now.
Yeah, fair enough.
I stubbed my toe.
The bus was 25 minutes late this morning, by the way.
I stubbed my toe the other night, Richie. What do you think I found under my bed? Mossad. And Muslims. Because apparently we're inundated with both in this country.
With both of them.
There you go.
Look, thanks for jumping in. It's absolutely true. We'll come to more of the fear-mongering shortly. It's not funny either, you know. We laugh at it, but it isn't funny because it might be working for them. We'll come to that later on. Loads to chat about today. The United Nations has said that Saudi Arabia is systematically attacking and targeting civilians in Yemen. Interesting story in The Independent yesterday saying that David Cameron has been asked to stop arming or stop selling arms to the Saudis. I think we have that head, maybe that story. We have loads of pictures and loads of stories here. There he is there. Cameron, between May 2010 and March 2015, the last government, the coalition, sold or licensed, to give it a proper title, £4 billion in arms sales to the Saudis. Now that the Conservatives were elected last year uncontested, they won the election in a majority, didn't they? Sales have gone through the roof. Oh yeah, they've managed to increase sales. £3 billion worth of arms was sold last year alone to the Saudis, to our great friends. The results? 10,000 Yemenis are dead. Children are dead! Young children! And I don't have a child. Children like them have been blown to fucking pieces by bombs made in this country. Live with that when you're watching the X Factor or the fucking match tomorrow. Live with that. 80% of the population, according to Amnesty, needs aid. And the Saudis are targeting schools, hospitals and markets. And you know what makes it even worse? Is that British military officers are in the control rooms when it is going on. I'm right, aren't I? There's no lies being told here. There's no conjecture. We learned this week that British military personnel are acting as cheerleaders. Now, that might be harsh. They're acting as cheerleaders. They're standing there watching children being blown to pieces in Yemen and presumably going, very effective that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It works very well, that, yeah.
Isn't that how
Are you happy you bought
been?
that? Do you want some more of those missiles? Eh? Faisal, what do you think, Faisal? Very good, it's very good. Fucking children.
Thus has it always been, Richie. And unless we do something, it's always going to be that way. So.
And we'll come to Cameron in a minute, the rat bastard that he is. He was questioned by Jeremy Corbyn in Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday this week. Very fair question about an inquiry. You think you'd have a public inquiry, wouldn't you? Children being blown to pieces by an ally of ours using bombs that we gave them. We'll come to that in a minute. We have a report from Channel 4 News, don't we? We should just go to that so I can calm down. Let's have a look.
Last week, these airstrikes by a Saudi-led coalition killed at least 6 people in northern Yemen. When an ambulance run by Médecins Sans Frontières arrived at the scene, MSF says another airstrike hit the ambulance and killed the driver. The aid agency says at least 40 others were wounded in a wave of attacks. Children were among them. Will I live or not? Asked this boy. Can't be more than about 12 years old. Which begs the question why British bombs like this one are being dropped. Why the British government approved more than £1 billion worth of British bombs and missiles being sold to Saudi Arabia from last July to September. And Jeremy Corbyn is angry for one.
Coalition forces have conducted airstrikes targeting civilians and civilian objects.
Today he asked the Prime Minister to review and suspend arms sales to the Saudi Kingdom.
As the Right Honourable Gentleman knows, we have the strictest rules for arms exports of almost any country anywhere in the world. And let me remind him, we are not a member of the Saudi-led coalition. We're not directly involved in the Saudi-led coalition's operations. British personnel are not involved in carrying out strikes.
Not directly involved, he says. but the government admits British military advisers are in the air campaign's control rooms. And British military advice certainly didn't prevent this attack on an MSF hospital on January the 10th, which the aid agency says killed or injured patients and medical staff.
We're not part of the coalition, he said. We give them the bombs and our men are in the control room, but it's got fuck all to do with us. I made an analogy on the radio show last night that got a few laughs. I suppose it was funny. It wasn't meant to be funny. I'm not a funny guy, really. I get laughed at a lot, but I'm not particularly funny. Maybe I have a unique kind of perspective on things that people find amusing sometimes. But if my neighbour Christy, as I mentioned last night, I don't have a neighbour Christy, but imagine I do, despises my other neighbour Michael, really hates him. And not only that, but he wants his house and his possessions. And he's a bit unbalanced. And I give Christy a couple of Glocks, a shotgun and a baseball bat. And Michael ends up turning up dead or in a gutter, somebody's head caved in. But I've got fuck all to do with that. None of my business. That's a fair analogy, isn't it, Hayden?
Yeah. Sadly, last night I responded with, well, that would be very neighbourly.
That'd be very neighbourly of you.
But I'm maybe not.
No.
But no, it is. It's a completely fair analogy, and it's exactly how geopolitics has worked for the last few generations. It's how it's worked. Find a bad situation, profit of it.
Every now and then, Hayden, you're absolutely spot on. Every now and then, the Hague arrests somebody from some country in Africa. Some madman now. Let's be honest about it. Whether it's, I don't know. My mind was filled a few minutes ago with recent Charles, what's his name, who was tried for war crimes. You have so many names going around your head. I should have written a few down. But they do. They find these third world dictators and they bring them forward. It's absolutely fair, and it isn't sensational to say David Cameron should be arrested along with George Osborne and brought to The Hague and charged with being complicit in the murders of those children. It's as simple as that. When you give somebody weapons whom you know is going to use those weapons to murder innocent people, you are an accessory before and after the fact. Am I right?
One thing to keep in mind, as long as you're arming the good guys.
The good guys.
You're okay.
That's right. These are the good guys.
But if someone comes out who might be completely opposed to my entire ideology in life, you know my thoughts on ISIS, my thoughts on religion in general.
Yeah. Like me, you're an atheist.
But if someone said, support ISIS, they're in prison.
That's it.
Now, for me personally, it would mark someone out as ignorant to the way I
absolutely right
in my life.
Absolutely right.
But what does it matter? It's not doing anything.
Yeah.
But that's illegal. Okay, so that's illegal. Okay, that's the law. Fine. But why is it legal to arm murderers?
Oh, that's it. Somebody.
And that's the problem. It's all a matter of scale. What's the old saying? If you, I'm sure it came from somewhere else, but
you're thinking of if you rob a bank, to give you
kill a man, you're a murderer.
Yeah.
Kill many, you're a conqueror.
You're a conqueror. Yeah.
Kill them all, you're a god.
You're a god. Yeah.
We're conquerors.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm reminded, Hayden, as well, by the way, of a story which broke yesterday. Some poor chap. It's not that I don't write this stuff down. We don't have. Our time isn't infinite on the television show. But there was news yesterday, regional news somewhere. Some poor guy's gotten 4 months in prison for writing nasty emails to his local council over parking fines. Now, the emails, none of them were threatening to physically harm anybody in the buildings, but they were full of fuck this and you're an effing this and you're an effing that. Gone to prison.
Not allowed to offend people.
Imagine it, though.
I'm going to get a long stretch soon, aren't I?
Well, you don't. Well, what you do, and you do it well. But you don't write to people and say that stuff.
No.
But even if you did write to people and say that stuff, I wouldn't argue that you should be jailed for it.
At the worst, in the old days, you'd have got a visit from Plod.
Yeah.
Saying, you know what?
Stop doing that. Yeah.
Just calm down.
Leave it alone. Yeah.
But now they're going to give you an internet ASBO.
Yeah. And put you in prison for 4 months because they're privatising the prison systems in this country, and they need to put people in prison.
Got to make some hackers. We need to up the prison population. America's left us way behind.
Way behind.
We need to catch up.
On the arming the Saudis to go and murder babies in Yemen, Alex Salmond of the SNP had this to say. I think we have the clip, mate. I'm not trying to Shanghai you there. Have a look at this.
This 900% increase in the selling of arms to Saudi Arabia over the last few months. 900% increase. Billions of pounds of armaments have been sold, and there's every reason to believe that some of these armaments are being used in what the United Nations have already indicated is potentially illegal use against civilians in Yemen. Now, this extraordinary statement from the government that they're very careful about what arms they sell, but they never have turned down a single certificate in the case of Saudi Arabia, in the case of what's going on in Yemen. And I think the UK government really have to have a good look at this, because if you sell arms for illegal use, then you yourself are in the dock as guilty in terms of international law. And there's every reason to believe British arms, British bombs, British weapons are being used by Saudi Arabia in the killing of civilians in Yemen, and that's an extraordinarily serious situation.
Can't argue with any of that. I don't expect David Cameron to be visited by anybody in authority, or at least in wearing uniform, to ask questions of him anytime soon. We'll take a very quick break. You're with the Richie Allen television show for Friday the 29th of January 2016 in association with BVtv and davidike.com. Back in a minute.
Here at Accounts Direct, we understand that, as a small business owner, it's all too easy to find yourself up to your neck in, something this colour. We'll get you out of the stuff, and with our experience in restructuring, planning, and even refinancing, we'll help you stay out of it too. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side. Nearly said
Welcome back to the programme. Please check out beyondvision.tv. And while you're there, read about this incredibly worthwhile charity. It's part of a charity. It's part of the Beyond Vision Foundation. It's really, really terrific. I spoke a little bit about it on the last show, and probably in future shows I'll get into it more and more. It's a great thing. Check out beyondvision.tv. Also check out davidike.com/headlines. David has announced the actual dates for many of the cities, the actual dates for many of the cities that he will be visiting in the forthcoming Worldwide Wake Up Tour through 2016 and through 2017. He got his visa. Since I last spoke to you on this programme, he got his visa from Australia, from the Australian government. So all those dates are now confirmed. He does an all-day presentation. I was lucky enough to see him in Wembley in October of 2014 with the future Mrs. A, and it's just fantastic. I mean, it really is. It's life-changing. It's to be in a room with thousands of people, listening to what David is saying, listening to the arguments, to the theories, backed up by the audio visuals, and then later on, in between the segments, having your little break and your cup of tea, chatting with people, many of whom who disagree with certain aspects or agree with certain aspects, and you end up having debates. It's a wonderful thing. It really is. So check him out. His new book is out as well, Phantom Self. All details on davidike.com. My radio show airs Monday to Friday, richieallen.co.uk. David Ike sponsors it. It's a terrific show. I'm regularly asked questions about the listening figures. Richie, you claim that it's the most listened to in Europe. How can you say that? It's a little bit cheeky to say that, just a little bit. We say it because the programme isn't made by a radio station. It's completely independent. It's made by me. And of programmes of that type, it must be the most listened to programme in Europe, because we verifiably have 40,000 listeners a night. Our podcasts are downloaded 20,000 times a week, and we get over 350,000 views a month on YouTube. We've now passed over 4 million views on YouTube. I don't think an independent content creator in radio is doing anything like that anywhere in Europe. If somebody is, well, I bow to them and I'll be asking them to come on my programme. Is it bragging? No. I say that because I regularly say that to those who donate to the programme to say, look, this is what can be achieved if you support the independents. That is why I want you to go to beyondvision.tv, because this particular platform is going to provide you with a host of programming, and programmes not like this necessarily, but entertainment-based ones, sport-based ones, music-based ones, and programmes made by young children and adolescent children. Beyondvision.tv, find out more there. More on that, as I said, in the future. Moving on. Well, I'm obviously interested in this. Paramedics, I'm going to read from this story, by the way. Paramedics had to be called to a secondary school when pupils fell in and fainted after being given their vaccinations. Around 10 to 15 students from year 10 reportedly keeled over after getting their jabs at Northampton School for Boys on Tuesday. Turns out they were meningitis vaccinations. One parent who saw the drama unfold said children were seen on their backs on the floor with their legs on chairs. She didn't want to be named a woman. She said several different vaccines were being administered. They were getting several different vaccines on the day. Anyway, 10 to 15 pupils keeled over, paramedics were called. The rest of the jabs were cancelled and a letter was sent home to the parents of the pupils who were given the jabs about what to do. So they were sent home with a letter about what to do if they got worse. I've investigated this subject historically. I'm not. You might think that this is segueing into a big segment on vaccinations. No, it isn't. I'm just mentioning this story because it was in the news this week, and my show regularly speaks to men and women. Some of them doctors, some of them ex-doctors, some of them not doctors, some of them just journalists who've got a lot to say on this, and some of them who think completely differently to me. So I've had people on the programme who think that the idea that vaccinations are causing autism and other illnesses, that's nonsense. So I've invited those people. I've been very fair on the Richie Allen radio show. I think I've done what the mainstream media won't do. I've provided both sides of it. Now, in truth, I've provided 70% or 75% more coverage of those who say vaccines are dangerous. But then again, the mainstream media won't give these people any airtime. That's why I do what I do. This week on the show, Stephanie Seneff, who isn't a doctor, it must be said, before anybody starts shouting, but who is an MIT professor in computer science and artificial intelligence and writes for a magazine called Entropy. She's been criticised roundly and widely by people working in pharmaceuticals and people working in medicine. But I asked her about the idea that autism is increasing, and it's on the increase because we have become better at diagnosing it, and this is what she had to say to me. Why are they wrong, Stephanie? Why is it not that?
I mean, I just am shocked that they are determined to try to dismiss autism through this notion that we're diagnosing it more. I mean, I think the school systems are really burdened by trying to take care of all of these autistic kids, which are very needy. It may be true that we're diagnosing it more, and maybe that's part of the problem. But, you know, the CDC has built a beautiful exponential curve. It is a perfect match to a straight line when you take a log. Looking back to the 1970s, every year they've done an estimate of autism, and it's making a beautiful exponential graph. To me, you don't get exponential graph just by diagnosing things more. I just think that it may be a part of the contribution. And on the other hand, I think we may be diagnosing it less because the school systems are extremely burdened by the cost. Every time they diagnose a child as autistic, they have to provide a lot of extra services to that child. And so there's pressure, I think, to diagnose it less, as well as pressure to diagnose it more from parents because they can get more services. So we don't know. But I just feel, I know people with children with autism today. I never did growing up. I never met a single person in really the first 30 years of my life that had autism.
Stephanie Seneff is just one, of course, of a recent, you could say, deluge of men and women from different academic backgrounds, like in her case, not always from a medical background, who are crunching data and saying, look, here's the here's what we think is proof there's a correlation between vaccines and ill health. Thanks for putting that up there, Hayden. That's a truism. It is true that all the official safety studies done on vaccines were conducted by the industry and by the government, which is lobbied heavily by the industry, who also benefits from vaccine sales. That's absolutely true as well. There's been no proper environmental impact study done on vaccines, particularly in recent years when more and more vaccines are being given to children. I'm going to leave that there for today, okay? You've heard me speak about that many times before. Moving on, this week, Hayden, I love this, Ban Ki-moon is leaving. It seems that these Secretary Generals grow a set of balls when they're leaving office. That's when they start attacking people and going after people. He's not had a lot to say about Israel over the years, apart from passing resolutions which are worthless. But this week, he said that after nearly 50 years of occupation, after decades of waiting for the fulfilment of the Oslo promises, Palestinians are losing hope. Look at this from the BBC.
Continued settlement activities are an affront to the Palestinian people and to the international community. They rightly raise fundamental questions about Israel's commitment to a two-state solution.
Ban Ki-moon condemned the recent stabbings and shootings by Palestinians targeting Israeli civilians, as well as rockets fired by militants in Gaza. His strongest language was directed at Israel.
Palestinian frustration is growing under the weight of a half-century of occupation and the paralysis of the peace process. Some have taken me to task for pointing out this indisputable truth. Yet, as oppressed peoples have demonstrated throughout the ages, it is a human nature to react to occupation, which often serves as a potent incubator of hate and extremism.
From Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, an angry response.
The words of the Secretary General only bolstered. There is no justification for terrorism, period. The Palestinian murderers do not want to build a state. They want to destroy a state, and they declare this publicly. They want to murder Jews wherever they are, and they say so publicly. They are not killing for the cause of peace. They are not killing to aid human rights. The UN has long ago lost its neutrality and its moral powers, and these words by the Secretary General do not improve the situation.
BB. Yeah, I suppose you can grow a set of cojones as you're leaving office, and look, resolution after resolution is passed about Israeli settlements. Doesn't matter. You can stand at the side of any dispute between anybody. It's a great graphic, that, by the way, disappearing Palestine since 1947. That's pretty much what's happened to that part of the world. Nobody disputes that. It was Holocaust Memorial Day on Wednesday. I've made hundreds of radio shows over the years on commercial radio and in mainstream radio. I've always been very interested about the evil and the horrific things that man is capable of doing to his fellow man. And what happened in Germany post the outbreak of the Second World War and during it was heinous. And I spoke about it on the programme during the week. The Nazi lunatics, they targeted everybody. You know, gypsies, Eastern Europeans. They certainly targeted the Jewish people in that country for extermination. I have no doubt about that at all. I've got problems, though, with teachers being told that they need to do extra training to better teach the Holocaust. I've got problems with £10 million being spent on a memorial for a Holocaust memorial here in Britain. I've got problems with the racist and vile Israeli regime bombing the Gazans into the Stone Age and using the example of what happened to Jews in the Holocaust. I've got serious problems with all of that. Let's have a look at this clip from Sky News this week.
Rather than forget the horrors he went through, Ziggy spends his days talking about his experience at schools all over the country. It's personal testimonies like his and other Holocaust survivors, which the Education Committees say are vital in teaching students about the Holocaust. They claim history teachers, however, need better training.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Great. Good.
So to change this, the Education Committee are calling on the government to improve training for teachers and extend the teaching of the Holocaust to other subjects such as English and drama.
When I heard a survivor speak, I thought, I'm not doing this properly. I have a responsibility, I have a duty to do it properly. And that is when I started to look around for training, and that's where I found great training at places like the Centre for Holocaust Education, which has enabled me probably to teach my most impactful lessons.
I find that disturbing, and later on in that Sky News clip, they canvassed some of the students there who were obviously all very enthusiastic about learning more about the Holocaust and visiting some of these concentration camps. Look, without going into it too deeply, because we don't have the time to do it, I'm an advocate of, and somebody who was very moved and touched and had my, I suppose, I won't say I had my opinion changed, but some of my views were formed by reading The Holocaust Industry by Norman Finkelstein, whose aunt and mother were at Auschwitz. In fact, his aunt was murdered at Auschwitz concentration camp. And it's a great book about the exploitation of the memory of the Holocaust by the State of Israel. And it's all pervasive, I'm afraid, today. I've had enough of the Holocaust. I've had enough of it. I've had enough of listening to it. That's another great little cartoon. Thanks for sticking that in there, Hayden, as well. Holocausts and genocides happen all the time. We very rarely hear about them. Maybe we should hear more about those as well. As for the Israeli government or regime, I was accosted this week on social media for referring to the Assad regime when, a supporter of Bashar al-Assad said to me, Richie, you should refer to it as the Assad government. I suppose I should, maybe. Maybe I should refer to the Israeli government as the Israeli government. Look, what I've said about the Israeli government, I've got to stand by, and I do stand by it. Sanction them back to the Stone Age. If it had an impact on the barbarous South African government or regime as it did, do it to Israel. Stop building memorials to the Holocaust. Stop telling teachers they are not teaching it enough. Stop ramming it down our throats. Stop making Hollywood films about it. We're sick to fucking death of it. Of course, the survivors of it and the families are not. And of course, should keep the memory of it alive. Of course. I have no problem with that at all. But stop telling us it should be taught in English classes and in religious studies. Fuck no. Stop allowing this vile terrorist state use history to play the victim card when they are called out for their crimes. And stop passing resolutions condemning the settlements. Stop passing those resolutions. Stop cutting down trees to waste paper because the Israelis couldn't give a fuck. It has no effect on them whatsoever. Sanction them back to the Stone Age. That's my opinion and my opinion only. So we're leaving that for a minute. And we're going to the police selfies, are we, Hayden? Are we going to the police selfies? Because we're nearly wrapping up now, aren't we? Well, over to you, mate. What you make of this? Tell us, first of all, what's going on here. The police selfies.
Well, the police
I'll have a sip of water.
In Coventry have been going on burglary patrols. Not to catch burglars, to assess the danger for householders. And when they found unlocked doors, which surprised me there were any, but it happens, they were nipping in the house and taking some selfies and putting it on Twitter. They were breaking and entering.
Yeah. They were unlawfully walking into people's house.
The police do not have any rights that civilians don't have apart from the power of arrest.
Yeah.
They need a warrant to gain entry to a property.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All these things, they are civilians that need permission from the courts. They are not our betters. They are not our prosecutors. They are there as officers of the law.
Do us a favour before you carry on. Put that back up there and scroll up there and see is there a picture. There must be a picture. Is there?
Let me get this back up for
Fantastic. This is unbelievable, this. Look at this. That's somebody's fucking house. And because they found an unlocked door, is what you're saying. They went in and went, oh, look what we were able to do.
Yeah, I mean, in the story, if I refer back to it, they just walk in on side. Coventry police have been criticised for a burglary patrol tactic where officers entered unlocked homes in the city and posed for pictures inside, which they then posted to Twitter.
Have you any sympathy with the police?
For doing this?
Yeah.
No, the morons. And it's illegal. They've broken the law.
Absolutely.
Never mind anything else. They've broken the law. They are there to uphold the law. That is their job.
Pass me my conspiracy hat, because it's going on.
I don't have one
What's
handy.
going on?
Hang on, I've not even got any tinfoil.
My metaphorical conspiracy cap. Because they want to normalise it. They want to normalise the invasion of privacy. And here's a wonderful way of doing it. Just get used to our presence in your lives, like it or lump.
But I do believe that if that is the case, and I may or may not believe that is the case, but if that is the case, they've cocked up because no one's quite ready for this yet because there's been an uproar. It says here...
I wonder if anybody going to sue them.
Well, this is what we're going to find out because police said they've received no complaints. But after tweeting on the weekend to thank people for their feedback in a message that ended by posing a question, hashtag social media success.
Thank you for your feedback. Fuck off out of my house.
The force apparently answered themselves by deleting all the tweets.
Yeah, deleted all the tweets. Yeah, you panic. Yeah. Cheers, buddy. And finally for today, in a shopping centre in Braehead. I can't do any accents. Worst impressionist of all time. I used to think I was good. I used to do a Bruce Forsyth impression. And people used to laugh at me in sympathy. It was so bad. So I can't do the Scottish accent.
I've been telling you this Irish one isn't panning out.
It's not working either, is it? No, it's not working either. Put up the screen, the story there. Braehead, which ISIS must be absolutely... They must have been on the plans, or it must have been in the future of ISIS. Braehead shopping centre in Scotland. There was a drill there. People running around with mock guns and victims and stuff like that. And the police were asked about it and they said, there's no intelligence that anything is likely to happen in Braehead, but we're preparing for any sort of eventuality. Now look, I'm going to finish this week by saying this. This is widespread fear-mongering, and it's fear-mongering by state. This is what your government is trying to do to you, to keep you in a never-ending state of unease and fear. There you are. Unease and fear. And the proof of this is, Hayden, they could have commandeered any industrial estate late at night when people weren't around, brought all these actors in and done their drill. This is to send a message out to people. Be afraid, be very afraid.
Absolutely. And the worst part is, though, they picked Glasgow. Okay?
Yeah. Braehead in Glasgow.
Where, to be fair, the last terrorist attack that occurred in Glasgow resulted in the terrorist on fire being knocked out by a Glaswegian. So I don't think they really give a fuck up there, to be honest with you.
I don't think they're too bothered.
He punched a man on fire whilst waiting for a bus. I don't think they care about ISIS very much, if I'm honest. Basically, it's ISIS, get the fuck you.
Glaswegian kiss. And here's a little cautionary tale for you. This is why, if you ever see an advertisement in a newspaper asking you to become, what do they call them, an extra in one of these terrorist drills, this is why you shouldn't. Have a look at this legendary clip of Peter Power talking to ITN News on the day of the 7th of July, terrorist bombings 2005. Look at this.
Today we were running an exercise for a company, bearing in mind I'm now in the private sector, and we sat everybody down in the city, 1,000 people involved in the whole organisation, but the crisis team, and the most peculiar thing was we based our scenario on the simultaneous attacks on the underground and mainline station. So we had to suddenly switch an exercise from fictional to real. And one of the first things is, get that bureau number. When you have a list of people missing, tell them. And it took a long time.
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario.
Almost precisely. I was up until 2 o'clock this morning because it's our job, my own company, Advisor Consultants. We specialise in helping people to get their crisis management response. How do you jump from slow time thinking to quick time doing? And we chose a scenario with their assistance, which is based on a terrorist attack because they're very close to a property occupied by Jewish businessmen. They're in the city, and there are more American banks in the city than there are in the whole of New York. A logical thing to do. And I've still got the...
I was going to say, how extraordinary today must feel for you as it unfolds. You mentioned a few moments ago there our experience with Irish Republican terrorism. Yeah. And of course, it was very different, wasn't it? Because however perverted their behaviour, the IRA believed itself to have some sort of code of honour and tended to issue warnings, although of course they often came late to do any good.
Yeah, these terrorist drills have a strange habit of going live, like that one. That's tragic, by the way. But I'm just going to give him a mention because he was on the show during the week, the radio show. Nick Colliston wrote a book called Terror on the Tube, which I can say with absolute certainty is the definitive account of why what we were sold by the British government did happen on 2005 is utter nonsense. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I do recommend you check it out. Beyond the Veil, 2005 Terror on the Tube. Thank you very much for watching this programme. You didn't have to, but you did. I appreciate it. One of the things you can do now is you can copy and paste the link to it into your Facebook page or onto your Twitter page or whatever you call them these days. Thanks very much, Hayden. Thank you, my friend. Always good to have you on board, mate. Thanks for the post-production as well. Check out liveleak.com for the Live Leak show. Stay with beyondvision.tv. Look out for these charming fans with the man Colin Manford. Great show that. Even though it's a city show, it's a great show for fans. Loads of that sort of stuff coming on beyondvision.tv. Until next Friday, have a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.